So I'm going to show you how I wrap my bassoon reeds using beeswax and cotton crochet thread, I think. So the first thing I do is I check the wires, but before I do that, I dip the butt end of the reed in some water and give it a little shake. I don't want to soak it, I just don't want it to be stone dry. As you can see from this blank, it says 2018, so clearly I just kept on making blanks and didn't get back to number 187 from 2018 until today, almost the end of 2020. So let's just put it on the mandrel and see if the wires are loose. Third wire is not loose. For some reason, my third wires are rarely loose. Good thing, because they're hidden under this wrapping and you can't tell later on. Second wire is a tiny bit loose, but first of all I'm going to... Oh, first wire is loose. Really loose. So I'm going to put it back in position, but I'm not going to worry about the first wire. I'll deal with it later. The second wire, I think I'll just make sure it's in position on the right spot. Give it a little pull, then relax, and then lock the spot. Crimp it with my pliers. Good. And the first wire is quite loose, but I'll just replace it in a bit. Now, once I've tightened the wires, I just double check that it's not really tightly onto the mandrel, but there we go. Now, I use this lovely, I can never find the camera, here it is, this lovely Portuguese cotton, soft but sturdy also, crochet thread, and it has a lovely shine on it if you have put the right amount of tension. So I take the end of the thread and I lay it between the second and third wires, right in that side seam, and then I put my thumb on top of it underneath the second wire and do one turn around the bottom of the second wire, and that's enough to hold it in place. And now I'm right-handed, so I keep my left hand stable and I wrap steadily. If you're just doing this, if you're just learning to do this, you might want to do a half turn and observe it on both sides. And it's very easy to maintain a good equal tension doing this too. It might even be easier now that I'm trying it. But I sort of enjoy the Zen approach of aiming for complete accuracy on the unseen side. And of course, you're allowed to doubt yourself and double check. It's actually very good. But sometimes it's not, and if it sort of wanders apart and there's a little bit of a gap, you can just use this string to push the other strings up. Get my pliers out of the way. Alright, back to programming. Here we go. Finish wrapping the tube section and arrive snug to the top of the bottom wire, the third wire. Then I walk the thread to the side seam and I neatly drop down to underneath the third wire. I go around once. Oh, I just blocked it. Let me try doing that so you can see. I go around the bottom of the third wire. You're gonna have to take my word for it. Is there some way I can show you that? It's not the most critical thing, I'm just curious. How could we do that so you could see it? Underneath the third wire, there's a way. Anyway, you get the idea. Wrap it once around the third wire on the bottom, and then I cross back up in the same spot, go halfway around the reed to the other side seam, this point here, cross down. Sometimes it won't go right there, so it's slightly in front. Then the thread goes along the bottom of the third wire. I find that first point where I went up. Can you see it? And I go a millimeter in front, and now it's a repetitive up and down action. In fact, it's identical to how this is wrapped in the end. I'll put them side by side. It's the same principle, except we apply a little bit more tension. And in fact, the kind of tension that you apply will determine the shape of the decorative ball at the bottom of your bassoon reed. I do not know if you can see that, but I'm hoping you can. 1 millimeter in front. Maybe I should change the exposure a little bit. Let me put my thumb there, hold it. I don't like reducing the exposure because it makes my fingers look purple. Anyway, it might help you see the thread better. Let's see what that looks like. So there is the piece going down. I go in front of it, go halfway around the reed, go up. All right, gonna just keep going here. Depending on the gauge of your thread, that is how thick your thread is, or how big your reed is, or how small it is, you might end up doing about 50 turns, but I don't count unless I'm really bored or just curious. I just go by how it looks. And yeah, I apply a little more tension at the bottom and the top. Every player ends up having a very distinctive shape to their decorative ball. I'm going to try and turn it flat so you can see what I'm doing. It's very, I like working upright. I realize you can't see. So I'm going to go flat. There. I think it's starting to be more visible. Up, down, up, down. I really prefer cotton thread. Once I used nylon thread, well, you can use nylon thread, but it requires less tension. If the time that I applied the nylon thread with the same tension that I apply my cotton thread, I choked my reed. It looked like it was wearing a 19th century corset. I mean, yeah, obviously I just could use less pressure. And you don't have to do a ton of pressure with the cotton, but it helps kind of regulate the way it's holding the reed. And of course, you know, commercial reed makers use machines to do this, and I can certainly understand if you're making dozens of reeds or more per day. But as a professional performer, the most I've ever made is 300 in a year, and it's in a normal year, and this is not a normal year, I make between 150 and 200. I've made fewer this year, working on other things, so it's really fun to get back to it. All right, I should have probably cut that third wire shorter because it's in my way. So yeah, doesn't matter. The thread has to go a little bit wide there. And then I continue in my rhythmic and equidistant fashion. Keep going. I keep going till it looks right. And you alone will decide when it looks right. So it depends also what kind of reed case you have. My father made me a beautiful one with metal mandrels, like proper full-sized mandrel tips, and suspended in a wooden case. So that case will take whatever size of reed I create. But if you have a slot type case or one of those extremely sleek French leather cases, they won't take a big decorative ball. They want something more tasteful. So I think that's pretty tasteful and a nice shape. So I'm going to just go up one more time. Then I come down and I go once. Oops, for some reason I go off camera when I do that. Once around the bottom. So I do it this way, but you have to be sitting beside me to see what that is. So just so that you see what happens, I go like I take it around the bottom once. That's a risky move in real life because it could spin the reed off the mandrel. Anyway, the point is, go around the bottom once. If you have room with your measurements, go twice. I just go once because it tends to just spool off the bottom if I do that. Then I go back up to the top of the ball and I make a loop and I hold it. Oops. Sorry, I don't know if that was on the camera. I'll try watching this time. I make a loop. Oh dear. Yeah, it's impossible to see the way I'm doing it. Okay, there it is. So it's a loop. It's easy. What's hard is to show you. And you can keep your finger in the loop like that. And you can either pass the whole skein through, just make the loop bigger, or you can cut the end of the string, put the end of it straight through, and pull it into a slip knot. This knot will naturally fall right at the top of the ball, and then when you pull it snugly, it disappears into the weave of the thread that you've already done. I think it's Gerald Corey, the former principal bassoon of the National Arts Centre Orchestra, who showed me this when I was a kid. But everyone will show you their methods, and you'll develop your own. This one's good though. My reeds don't come unwrapped, which is why I'm showing it to you. So then I hold the mandrel in my fingers down here and use my thumb and forefinger, the best reed making tools ever, those 2 digits, and I saw upwards with my X-Acto knife. There, looks pretty good. So we're going to take a little break and I will return shortly to show you how to apply the beeswax.